Welcome to another exciting episode of Without Regret, the podcast. Today, we have a tale that will leave you on the edge of your seat. My guest, fresh from crafting his first book, The Summer I Died 20 Times, is here to share his personal journey that defies the odds. Did you know that 450,000 Americans and Canadians succumb to medical errors each year? In this episode, my guest will unveil his own narrative of narrowly escaping becoming a statistic in that staggering figure. Brace yourself for a roller coaster of emotions as he recounts 11 heart procedures in 11 years, numerous encounters with clinical death, concussions, PTSD, post-concussion syndrome, brain trauma, defective pacemakers, and surgeries gone awry. But it doesn't stop there. Add multiple instances of cognitive medical bias and misdiagnoses to the mix. They certainly tried to put him on the permanently dead list. In a nutshell, his upcoming book, The Summer I Died 20 Times, is a personal medical drama. It is a gripping account of Fred's journey through deaths, brain trauma, recovery attempts, persistent medical errors, botched surgeries, cognitive biases, defective pacemakers, and the unwavering spirit of resilience. Join us as we navigate the tumultuous waters, questioning faith, and discovering the potent medical tool of intermittent fasting. It's not just about resilience, it's about refusing to let the adversities define Fred's life. This is Without Regret, where we unravel stories that inspire you to face challenges head-on and emerge stronger than ever. Please welcome my guest, Fred Rutman, aka Repeatedly Dead Fred. All right, Repeatedly Dead Fred.
That's me.
20 times. 20 or 21?
Well, just that first summer. There were lots of other incidents after that first summer. We think it's somewhere around 50 now.
50. And
Yes.
when you say dead, what exactly do you mean by that? Because you're obviously not dead.
That is a fantastic question. So the definition I was given is that I was clinically dead, which means my heart had stopped for more than 30 seconds and I had stopped breathing for more than 30 seconds. There's probably other medical opinions that would give you different definitions of that, but that's the one I got. That's the one I'm sticking with.
Was it all from the same thing?
Yes.
Okay. What was that? What is that? And is it still happening?
It sort of is still happening. I have something called a sudden onset full heart block, which means the electrical system in my heart started to die and it stopped sending signals. So there's first degree heart block, second degree, third degree, and then there's the full heart block, which means nothing is being generated, nothing's getting through. So if nothing tells your ventricle and your atria to beat, it doesn't beat. So you're kind of dead.
Okay. So this is a chronic issue for you then?
It is. It generally doesn't happen to men until they're maybe in their early to mid 70s. And that's one of the reasons they couldn't figure out what was going on with me. So they weren't looking for it.
And it is something you have to look for.
Yeah. If you're lucky, you might have them running an ECG or a Holter monitor or something like that while it's happening, and then they've got a recording and they can see it. But if they don't have that system set up, there's no evidence that it happens if your heart starts up again and is beating normally.
So how old were you when it started happening?
Good question. Now, because I've been repeatedly dead, and some other things happen, I'm sometimes repeatedly brain dead. So I don't remember. So I'll say like 47 sounds like a reasonable number.
Okay. Seems like 47, they should do an EKG at the minimum, right?
Yeah, but if it's not happening
at that moment,
in that moment, it's not going to show anything.
Right.
So they kept trying to test me for a heart attack and things like that. And they weren't seeing evidence of a heart attack because I forget what the enzymes are called that shows when your heart muscle starts to decay after you have a heart attack. Um, so you'd think, and this is not to bash the medical profession or anything like that, because sometimes things just happen. Um, if you've looked for it for 15 times or so and you haven't seen it, it might be time to look for other things.
Right. So walk me through, how did they finally eventually diagnose you with, repeat for me again what it was called?
Sudden onset full heart block.
Full heart block. Okay. So how did they finally figure it out?
Well, about 4 or 5 months after this all started happening, one of the cardiologists in this hospital decided to put me on a Holter monitor, which is one of those, I guess at that time it was still almost like a cassette, um, that monitors your heart for, I think it was 72 hours. And it just so happened I had a number of incidents while I was wearing that. And they were eventually able to get some sort of specialist to come and read the tape. And the doctor came running back into my room, like, holy, swear word.
You can
Your
say
heart's
swear
been
words on here.
stopping. You've been dead. Like, oh, thanks. Okay. What are we going to do about it?
And how long had it been going on at that point? For years or?
No, this was in the summer of 2009. So that's where I got the title for my book, The Summer I Died 20 Times.
Okay.
So it started in May of 2009, and they figured it out in August of 2009, which is
Okay.
a
So just a
pretty
few
long
months.
time.
So, okay. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but I saw something about a pacemaker in your bio, right?
Yes. So
But that was
was the
botched.
original. It was, and it was, and it was, and it was. um, so the pacemaker is like a little supercomputer, like depending on the version, is the size of a pocket watch, and it replaces the signals in your heart that tell it to beat. So that was the solution. What was going on with me, and it's a fairly common solution when they catch it, and it worked great for about 4 years, and then all of a sudden, I started collapsing again, and pretty much every time I collapsed, not 100% of the time, I would also hit my head. So, in addition to not having any oxygen, I was getting concussion after concussion after concussion, and then in 2013, they couldn't figure out why this was happening, and then eventually they figured out that the pacemaker was failing. So pacemakers aren't supposed to fail. And mine failed repeatedly, and they finally determined that one of the pacemaker wires, so little pacemaker 101 for you, the pacemaker has wires that run from the pacemaker, which is, you can see in my heart up here, or just in my chest, that runs through a couple of veins and gets implanted into your heart, and it replaces the electrical signals. And these wires are coated with insulin, just like any other electrical cord. And one of the cords or the wires cracked, and it kept shorting out. And when it shorted out, I shorted out. And it's not a pleasant experience.
I can only imagine. I don't want to imagine.
Yeah. So they figured out they had to replace the pacemaker wire, and then they realized they couldn't replace the pacemaker wire, so they wanted to insert a brand new wire. And I also said, well, the pacemaker battery is getting depleted. maybe we should replace the pacemaker as well. And they said, sounds like a reasonable idea. And we went in for the surgery, and things didn't go so well. So as they were opening me up, and they do this while you're awake. My first surgery, I was completely asleep. So this is just, they freeze the area. I guess they moved the pacemaker just the wrong way or the right way, depending on how you're looking at it. And the pacemaker shorted out in the middle of the surgery. So I flatlined. I was code blue again. And I could tell that the pacemaker had stopped before the big monitor that they watch all the vitals on showed up. I just remember saying, oh F, I'm gone. And then things went crazy after that. Anything you see on TV, when they're having a medical emergency and everybody shows up, in 3.8 seconds with every piece of equipment and every medication they need. And that doesn't happen in real life, or at least it didn't happen in my real life. So it was bedlam.
Where are you? Where do you live?
I'm in Toronto.
Canada.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's not like it's a little hick city with,
right. Yeah.
People
well, that
who
was my
don't know what they're
thinking, is
doing.
that I think a lot of times how privileged I am. The thought has crossed my mind multiple times to think about how privileged I am to live in a place that has multiple good hospital care, 5 to 10 minutes away, versus people that live out in the middle of nowhere, who just don't have that luxury. But that's not you.
Yeah. No, the first surgery was not one of our top rated hospitals. That just happened to be where I ended up because my heart stopped while I was at work, and that was the nearest hospital where I was. The subsequent surgeries were all in one of our top 5 hospitals, and it's just a confluence of events that just happened. Not because people were incompetent, it's just stuff happened.
Okay, that was definitely going to be one of my questions. And of course, you're in Canada and I'm in America. So I'm going to ask the question about, universal health care, and if you think that played a role at all, or if you think that the healthcare system there is fantastic. I would love to know.
I think it runs an entire spectrum, and it's just luck of the draw sometimes that you get some people that are not going to be on the all-star team. And initially I ran into a bunch of doctors that aren't going to be on anyone's all-star team. Maybe they've changed. Eventually, the team I have now, like super all-star Hall of Fame performers. My last couple of surgeries, what they did for me was like Harry Potter wizardry. So one of the surgeries, I was told I was one of 8 people in the world that this had been performed on.
Oh, wow.
And then my last surgery was custom designed for me. So I'm like, one of a kind.
What was that surgery?
Well, I'm actually running on 2 pacemakers simultaneously because they couldn't take the wires out originally, and they've run out of room to thread wires from the pacemaker into my heart. So they had to jerry rig a system. This is my 2018 surgery where they were going to try and replace the pacemaker with a brand new pacemaker on my right side, and they couldn't get the wires through the vein. So they had to figure out a way to put the second pacemaker in and set it up to just kick in when the original pacemaker would short out. And they did that, and it's not an exact science. And it took many, many months to get them fully synced up so that when it did short out, there'd be no lag Otherwise, I would, you know, hit the deck and until it kicked in.
So is it connected to the other pacemaker instead of going to the heart?
No, it's a
Or
separate sensing mechanism.
okay.
And when it senses there's no electrical signal in the heart, it kicks in.
But you said they couldn't get the wire to through the vein. So how does it work?
I have something called an epicardial lead. So instead of running the wire through the vein, they just run it underneath your muscle and I guess your skin, and attach it to the exterior of the heart.
Okay.
It's a crazy system.
But so they could only do that though as a secondary. That wouldn't work as a primary pacemaker then?
It
Or can you just not
probably
disable the other one? Like I'm trying to follow. It's all pretty crazy. So
okay. So let's go
you've
back to
got a
2013.
pacemaker. What's that?
Let's go back to 2013 and I'll
Okay,
run you through
we
the
skipped the
progression.
gap. Gotcha. Okay, let's do that.
Yeah. So when I went code blue in 2013, they had to stop the surgery and put in a secondary pacemaker through the groin, through the femoral artery, and wait to make sure that I didn't get an infection from what they had tried to do. And then they tried to do the surgery again about 10 days later. And that's when they learned that they couldn't put the wire in very easily because the vein had collapsed. So we're not sure why. Maybe something went wrong in that first surgery. We don't know. And then everything was good until 2018, and it all started to happen again. And they realized that this new wire that they had essentially forced in probably had cracked again. And so, the odds of this happening are just ridiculous.
Yeah. Do you play the lotto? Do you have lotto in Canada?
Yeah, we do. I play. Unfortunately, I'm doing better with pacemakers than I am with lotteries. So, um, so when this happened again in 2018, they decided that they were just going to say, the hell with the first pacemaker and all its crappy wires. We're going to try and go through with a full new one. And again, they couldn't get the wiring in. So that's how they had to jerry rig the secondary pacemaker. And eventually it worked really, really well.
So 2018, you've not had an episode since.
That would be lovely if that were true. So I had a couple of other incidents, and I was pretty okay. I still had lots of PTSD because I know you talk a lot about mental health and things
Yes.
like that. So, but you never know when the pacemaker is going to go out. And so you're walking around knowing you're a ticking time bomb.
Right.
And, should I be driving? Should I, be trying to go on the subway because I might fall in the tunnel? Like all these sorts of things are running through your mind all the time, and all the post-concussion syndrome and depth perception issues and memory issues and stuff like that. So eventually we realized in 2022 that the original pacemaker that was still in there, that was the main pacemaker, the battery was dying. So it was, shorting out and stopping and starting and reconfiguring itself. So it was dying a few years earlier than it should have been. So that whole pacemaker had to be replaced before the battery dried. And it was a very complicated surgery, and they ended up having to put it in, I believe, upside down with a number of the chambers reversed. from what a normal pacemaker would be and trying to connect it to this epicardial lead. But when they tried to access this epicardial lead, the one that goes to the outside of my heart, it was either calcified or scar tissued or something. So it turned into like an archaeological dig to get this thing out. And they're like, chipping away and trying to pull it through. And they, they kind of, I won't say damaged, but they altered the lead where it's supposed to plug into the pacemaker. And then they had to do all sorts of funky things. So they were on the phone with the pacemaker company, and they were on the phone with another world leading surgeon on these sorts of things. And I'm just laying there awake, and what's going to be the outcome here? Am I going to get connected back up, or am I not? So what was supposed to be 25 minutes ended up taking 3 hours.
And now
And
since then you've been good.
yes, I've been
So you've
wonderful.
had a few years of being good, but I'm sure, as you mentioned, there's still got to be something, that PTSD in the back of your mind going, it could happen again at any time. Like there's no guarantees.
Always, because
Yeah.
we know we were messing around with this lead that we altered. I don't know if we damaged it when they were yanking it around or digging it out, like some Indiana Jones kind of dig site. So
I love how
yeah,
you
there's
say
always going to
we,
be
like you
something.
were part of it. I'm sure you felt like you were part of it since you were awake for it.
Yeah, I was talking to the nurses and to the surgeons and stuff like that, and trying to maintain a positive attitude, and making jokes and stuff like that. But it's you have a choice. You know,
Yes.
you can choose to be really negative and say woe is me, or you can try to maintain a positive attitude and look for the humor and the good things, and the fact that these people were basically performing a miracle on me.
Right. Right. I mean, for the most part, it doesn't sound like there was negligence per se going on. So it's not your fault that that you have this condition. I'm assuming you were born with it, or is it something
Yeah,
that developed?
they're not exactly sure why this happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, it usually happens to men in their early to mid 70s.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows? I guess it's a congenital thing, but
Mm-hmm.
nobody's given me a definitive answer as to why this happened. What most people don't have that go along with this is, all the collapsing and hitting their head and the lack
Mm-hmm.
of
Right.
oxygen and the post-concussion and that sort of stuff. So I lost a lot of memory. I lost depth perception, a lot of vocabulary. I had speech impediments, balance issues, and all sorts of things. So
So how
it
did that?
took a while, and there was really no roadmap.
Right.
Yeah.
I was going to ask how did that affect your life? I mean, you're a man in your 40s. I mean, you're
Mhm.
still young, still active. I'm sure you were working, you said, because this had happened to you at work.
Mhm.
What kind of work did you do, by the
Yes.
way?
I was a college professor, so I was teaching uh, economics when this all went down.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
But I'm sure that
yeah, I know
impacted
some people say economics will be the death of them, but it's not the most fun course for students.
you. That was actually one of my favorite subjects in college, actually, was micro and macroeconomics. I got it. It just made sense to me.
Okay.
Um, but were you able to continue working and have
No,
no?
absolutely not. I've been on permanent disability ever since because
Okay.
I did have so much head trauma um, that, you know, I just couldn't hold down a full-time job. I just didn't have the faculties.
No
And,
pun intended.
yeah, That wasn't even an intended pun. It's the first time I've ever made that joke. I met some people about a week ago, and it's not uncommon for people to say, "Well, it doesn't seem like there's anything wrong with you." I said, "Well, you don't really know what's going on inside."
No, but I would think
It's
that's
like
a
with
big
any other
I would take it
mental
as a
health issue.
compliment.
Oh, for sure, for
Yeah,
sure.
for how far
But
you've come.
mhm. But there was no roadmap. I think that might be a difference in the medical systems, in that if you put something up for profit in the United States, somebody's going to come up with some sort of clinic and trial treatments. Whereas for us, it's a much slower process here. So I've heard there's, many facilities in the US for brain trauma, for people with brain trauma and memory issues that we just don't have here, or I haven't been directed to.
Right. I don't know how great they are
And
here, to be
I
honest with
work with a pretty high-end psychiatrist. Yeah, I'm sure some are quackery,
you. Yeah.
and some are pretty authentic. So, even the Mayo Clinic has some departments that aren't as great as they would hope they could be,
Hmm.
and that's just the way it works with medicine. The brain is the most complicated thing we have, and what works for me might not work for you. One of the things that I think has worked tremendously for me is intermittent fasting.
Right. Yeah. Why do you think that is the case?
Well, most people think intermittent fasting is just like a diet modality, that it's just there for weight loss. But simultaneously, if you follow the proper fasting protocol, it activates all these epigenetic systems in your body that are all healing modalities. So, for example, autophagy, it's a cellular cleaning system that gets all the gunked up proteins that are overfolded and misfolded in your body and repurposes them, and allows your cells to work more efficiently and do the things they're supposed to do. So I forget the gentleman's name, but it was a Japanese researcher who won the Nobel Prize for autophagy in 2016. Um, Sorry, I'm not good with the names right now, but it's pretty awe-inspiring. And yeah, you can look it up. Or people like Dr. Mark Mattson of Johns Hopkins, who's been researching intermittent fasting for decades. And, you know, he has some pretty firm research how intermittent fasting can contribute to generally healthier longevity in humans. And there's, Peter Attia also does that. I forget a couple of the other names, but there's some, um, Rhonda Patrick. There's some pretty heavy duty researchers that are all on the intermittent fasting bandwagon.
So this was Yoshinori Oshumi or Osumi. Does that ring a
I'm not
bell?
going to sue you.
I know. That's his name, Osumi.
Yeah.
Yeah, discoveries of the mechanisms for uh, autophagy.
Autophagy.
And what is autophagy?
Yeah,
So I
depending
know
on where you are.
auto is
Autophagy is self.
self. Yeah.
Phagy is
Phagy is
cellular cleaning.
okay.
And it's an ongoing process in your body that cleans up proteins that were not, how do I say this? Either not properly defined when they were made, or something happened to them because of various toxins or things that went on in your body, and they get folded over so that they can't be used where they're supposed to be used in the body. So it's almost like having clogged up pipes,
Mm-hmm.
except it's at the cellular level. So the better you get into the state of ketosis and a long fasting rhythm, the faster the autophagy system works and gets rid of all that gunk in your cells and lets them do what they're supposed to be designated for. We have dozens and dozens of different types of cells, and if the proteins get gunked up along with other things, our cells don't work properly.
So it doesn't get rid of
So the
the
autophagy,
cells, it cleans them up so that they can work the way they were intended to work.
correct. It's sort of like Drano for your cells.
Okay, gotcha.
That's a free plug. We're not sponsored by Drano. If you'd like to sponsor us, please
If
get
you'd
in
like
touch.
to, we'll take it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's very
So
interesting.
that's just one of the many, many things that one of the other things intermittent fasting does is it helps regulate our insulin levels. And insulin is one of the primary hormones in the body. I mean, it's hard to isolate, which hormone is the primary hormone. But if your body is producing too much insulin, puts you into this perpetual state of having high glucose levels and then low glucose levels, and then your body's just not going to run right when your glucose levels are out of whack. And it also trickles down to your leptin and ghrelin, which are your hunger, satiety hormones, and your body stops reading those properly. And then it goes all the way down to your gut biome. And your gut biome and the trillions of bacteria in there are really what run the body. And if those get out of whack, your entire body's going to get out of whack. It's going to affect your mood. I think 80% of our serotonin is produced in the digestive tract. And if the gut biome gets out of whack, it's going to really affect your mood in a negative way. And then also drives inflammation, and you may have heard of leaky gut syndrome, and which sends your immune system out of whack. So intermittent fasting can help put all of that back into balance. I had such bad body inflammation that I didn't even know. I thought just because I had been overweight for so long and I had played a lot of contact sports, I played hockey. I mean, I'm Canadian, it's the law. You have to play hockey in the morning, and my entire body just ached. And I just thought, well, that's a consequence of lifestyle and choices I made. And probably 6 to 8 weeks after I had started fasting, all of that went away.
Wow.
Like, just no medication, just all that inflammation went away.
So what intermittent fasting plan, I guess, are you following? Is there a right one, a wrong one? Because there's all kinds of different.
Yeah. So I follow the protocols of a woman named Jen Stevens. So I actually have a podcast coming out with her in about 2 weeks.
Okay.
And she ran a fasting group on Facebook that had about 350,000 members. And I ended up becoming a moderator for her. So I just learned so much out of that group and saw
Stevens.
yeah, GIN.
Say that again.
Yes. GIN, like the drink.
Gin.
Yes.
Gotcha. Sorry, excuse me while I take notes.
Sure. It's probably Virginia, but we just call her Jen. And Stevens with a PH. And she's got a number of books out, but probably her most influential book is called Fast, Feast, Repeat. And it's basically my Bible for how to fast and how to tweak things. And she's just a lovely, lovely person who, found intermittent fasting and what worked for her. And so I follow her protocols. And her primary protocol is something called the clean fast. So the purpose of intermittent fasting is not to tell you what to eat, but it's to help your body have periods when you eat and then periods when you let it rest and do its work. So it's time restricted eating is probably a simpler way to discuss it. And certain people will tell you when you're fasting, you can have bone broth or you can have bulletproof coffee or, all sorts of things like that. Or you can use artificial sweeteners, but your body's not really fasting. I'll say for most people, your body's not really fasting when you take those things in because it's food. It's all type of food. So her version of fasting is called the clean fast, where you can't do any of that. You can have black coffee, black or green tea, but you can't have any sweeteners or creamers or flavors or anything like that. And that makes a world of difference for many people. There is the odd person that can get away with the non-clean fast. Um, they're just blessed with those types of genetics, but for most of us, it doesn't work that way. So you want to get your body into ketosis, where it's burning ketones, which are the byproduct of burning your fat stores, instead of burning glucose. And your brain seems to like burning ketones much better than sugar, and you get rid of all the brain fog and those types of things. And that's been a huge contributor to my recovery, is getting rid of that inflammation and that brain fog.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm intrigued. I've never been intrigued so much by intermittent fasting before. I know my daughter, yes. My daughter's been doing it. She went to a dietitian education program because she's pre-diabetic type 2. And so we were actually just talking about it this evening. I asked her if she was still doing it, and she said she hadn't been. She needs to get back on it, whatever. So, and I said, well, I'm doing a podcast tonight with somebody who swears by intermittent fasting. So I'll see what I can find out. But I'm intrigued by it too.
I'm happy to answer any questions she might have.
What's that?
I'm happy to answer any questions she might have.
I will let her know. And I'll also turn her on to this book and Jen Stevens. And so what is your book about? What are you?
Oh, I just looked at myself and I'm like really Casper Ghost White on my camera here. So I'm usually
Do you have a ring light?
Yeah, that is the ring light.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going on. So
you have to turn on the auto retouch feature.
Oh, I don't even know what that is.
Touch up my appearance, I think is what it's called in the video settings.
Okay. So yeah, for a repeatedly dead person, I'm usually pretty pale, not usually this pale. So my book is about this crazy medical journey that I've been on. And right from the beginning. And I'm not a writer. I was a business prof. I've done a lot of marketing writing and business writing, but writing a book is a totally different animal.
Yeah.
And, figuring out how to get it published and all that stuff. So, and it's just about all the people that I met along the way and people that were an incredible support system for me. And I'm hoping that people will read my story and how improbable it is that I'm actually alive and any degree of functional, and realize that whatever they're going through, there's possibly a positive outcome for them if they try and keep a positive mindset and they let people help them. One of the things I learned on this journey is so many people are afraid to tell people what's going on, be it a mental health stigma or whatever, they're fighting cancer. They just don't want people to know their business. And it really denies people the opportunity to try and help you. And there are people out there. I've had so many people help me in this journey. Most of them I barely knew, and I have no idea why they decided to welcome me into their lives, but I'm sure grateful that they did.
These are people that are not in the medical profession?
yeah, people just from my community, from my synagogues, from just people I've met online. Um,
Hmm.
people would take me to doctor's appointments. People would make me meals. People would make sure I wasn't alone. Uh, whatever they could do. They would take me grocery shopping. Just they're just that type of soul that whenever they have an opportunity to do something good for somebody, they they adopt it as a mission. It's really quite amazing. And
That might be a
I
Canadian
think
thing.
it might be, but I mean, I I don't want to embarrass Jen and tell you all the things she's done for me and what she's done for other people. And when, when you hear her, you'll definitely know she's American. And all the
Okay.
people I've met through the internet, there's always going to be the odd nut bar that you meet. Um, and for the large percentage, they're just wonderful, amazing people.
Yeah. No, I think those people
And I
exist
think,
everywhere.
yeah, so it's not a border thing.
No,
Let's not make this bipartisan.
I'm just commenting on how nice people in Canada are.
Yes, yes, they are. So, um, yeah, it's,
So you just want
I
people to
don't know what else to say.
understand that there's hope. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Was that hard for you? Was that
Yeah,
something
and
you said you learned through the journey? Was that something that was difficult for you in the beginning?
I don't think it was, but I don't think it was also a conscious thing on my part because my parents had a very hard life and they were had their various maladies and things like that. So I'm quite used to being around medical people all the time, but I don't think it was something I was doing consciously. That and after my first surgery, when I started feeling better, people would offer to give me lifts and things like that, whether I was at synagogue for prayers or wherever. And I started saying, I'd really like to just walk home now that I'm feeling better, just to get the exercise and make sure I continue to heal. And one of the rabbis took me aside and he said, if you don't let people help you, or if you stop accepting their help, if you ever need it again, they're not going to offer it. And I thought that was a really interesting take. So I had to come up with, a happy medium and say, I'd really like to walk. So maybe you can just give me a lift halfway home. Would that be okay? And that satisfied people.
Right.
Or, maybe you can take me to the grocery store and I'll get whatever, I'll get home on my own. So you have to let people help you. And I think it's Malcolm Gladwell, if you're familiar with the author Malcolm Gladwell.
Mhm.
Maybe he has a premise, also Canadian, by the way. Uh, as an adult, as you get older, you become the composite personality of the 5 or 7 or 10 people you spend the most time with. And the higher quality people you spend your time with, you become the composite of them. And I'm not saying I was a dick or anything when I was younger, though some people might say that, but I think I'm definitely a much better person now than I was 15 years ago when all this happened, just because all these beautiful people decided to embrace me.
Where does that positive attitude come from? Is that just something you've always had? Or sounds like you may have been a dick
Okay.
when you were younger. So,
Yeah. So part of my journey is I learned in my 30s that I had had a stroke at birth, and I knew I had problems, but I didn't really know what they were because a big chunk of my brain wasn't working. And I used humor as a self-defense mechanism, but I think it was a little bit too sarcastic and malicious for a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm.
And um, because I knew something was wrong, I was always trying to improve myself. I didn't know what I was supposed to be working on, and I didn't know how to talk to any doctors about it because I didn't know it was a medical condition because I had never been diagnosed. But I remember I was always trying to do the self-help thing, take developmental courses and things like that. So in some ways it's always been part of me, but I think since I got sick in 2009, I've really taken it to a different level.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's fantastic. I think that
And
that attitude is probably also important for people's willingness to help you. It's not some before you can accept help, somebody has to be willing to offer it. And I think if you're not a pleasant person to be around, less people are probably going to even offer help.
that's true. Although there are, some Mother Teresa's out there that
That's true.
no, no matter what you are, they're going to help you whether you want it or not.
Yeah.
So
God bless them.
I've also, yeah, I've recently read Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, and he's a Holocaust survivor, psychiatrist who wrote dozens of books, and it doesn't get much worse than being in a concentration camp. And paraphrasing him, said, "If you have hope, you can overcome almost anything." And hope is a choice, not always the easiest choice, but it's not like our current supply chain issues where there's a limited supply of it. It's out there. You just have to grab it and apply it. And again, I'm not saying it's easy. Everybody's situation is different. Um, but if you have hope, that's a huge weapon to have in your arsenal.
Hope and a willingness to learn and change, and a want to learn and change too. Well, you are a
Yeah,
walking
it's
miracle,
all
sir.
multifactorial. I'm sorry.
You're a walking miracle.
Oh, yeah. So I've been told. So, um, yeah. One time when I was leaving the hospital, that's what the nurses told me. I was just a walking miracle. They've never seen anything like it, and I don't take that lightly. You know,
Yeah.
I have a strong belief in God, and I I don't know if I believe in God any more than when this all started happening to me. But we all are here for a reason. We just don't know what that reason is for the most part. There's the odd enlightened soul that seems to have greater insight, but you just have to go with your gut. Go back to the your microbiome and how it serves as your intuition. You've got to trust your gut and see where it leads you. I don't know. I just think my role now is to try and help other people get through whatever it is they're going through.
Yeah.
And if I get opportunities to talk to people, on your podcast or other podcasts, I think it's my obligation to do it.
That's what I'm here for, is for people to say, hey, I went through this horrible thing, and I've come out the other side better, stronger, happier, and here's how I did it. And that's exactly what you're doing.
And that's exactly what you're doing. You're a little walking miracle yourself.
I don't know about that. I tell you what, I've got more perspective. I'm like, yeah, okay, my life wasn't the greatest and I had to overcome a lot of things, but holy moly, I'm pretty blessed at the end of the day after talking to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
An unexpected side effect for me is the motivation and inspiration I've gotten from hearing people tell their stories. It wasn't supposed to be for me, but it is.
Oh, well.
Yeah, no, it's great. I'm not complaining, not at all.
It's your lottery win.
It is my lottery win, absolutely. It definitely is.
Mhm. So
Oh,
what
you froze up on me.
what's the most amazing story you've heard through your podcast? Sorry,
Oh
what's the most amazing thing you've heard through your podcast?
gosh, the most amazing thing. Oh my goodness. They're all so different. Yours is pretty amazing. But I think the one that strikes me the most is a gentleman who was battling drugs and alcohol addiction
Mm-hmm.
and got in a car accident and where he was driving and the passenger was killed. And he, while in jail, um, received a letter from the victim's mother forgiving him and showing him grace. And I'm going to tear up talking about this now. And he started a little ministry in church and I mean in prison, jail, and then when he got out,
Mm-hmm.
he's still continuing on that journey and he's been straight and sober for several years now after that happened. And
That's
that to
amazing.
me was just that's a lot to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot. And the forgiveness and grace that he got from the guy's mother was his like light, I guess, his
Mm-hmm.
smack in the face to, if she can forgive him, he can forgive himself.
Yeah,
So that's
he'd be
probably,
an amazing person to talk to.
oh yeah, unbelievable. I can put you in touch. He's on Podmatch. I can put you in touch.
Okay.
He doesn't, do you have a podcast?
And yes, it's called Man Walking Cast. Did
I'm
I freeze
sorry.
again?
It's called what? Yeah, you keep freezing up on me.
Oh, it's called the Dead Man Walking Podcast.
Dead Man Walking
So
Podcast. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, he's pretty incredible. Let's see if we can. Prior bookings. It was Doug Sweeney. I don't know if I can like forward him to you or he's
yeah, we
definitely
can just do something through email after.
okay. Yeah, that'll work. That'll work.
Have you
I wish it was
have you
like
heard of Amanda?
Amanda Blackwood.
Sorry. Yeah. Have
Yes.
you talked to her?
Yeah, we live in the same state. We actually
Isn't
don't live
she
far.
amazing?
She is amazing. And I've had her on my podcast. She was my first, she's the reason I got on Podbatch actually, because I met her at a podcasting
Oh,
event here in Denver, Colorado, because we
okay.
both live in the Denver area. So I
Mhm.
met her, had her on the podcast, and then met up with her and another woman named Susan Snow, who I also met on Podmatch, and she was on my podcast. And the three of us got together and, had some girl time, some coffee. And I really want to put together an event with them and anybody else who wants to come and
Mhm.
talk and just, tell their story. And I would love to do something like that.
That's amazing. The things that podcasts do for people that, even 10 years ago were just unthinkable.
Completely. I wouldn't even
The
have known what a
summits
podcast
and
was 10 years ago.
mhm. And now you're a podcast queen.
Working on it.
Mhm.
Working on it, but all I can do is keep having you guys on and, to tell your stories. And the great thing is that these stories will never go out of date. They'll never
Right.
not be relevant. And I just
Mhm.
think that's what's so amazing about it is like, even if I don't have, I may have 100 listeners now, I could have thousands later on, in 2 years from now, I could have thousands of listeners and these episodes are still relevant then. And I love that.
And then when you've
because
got thousands of listeners, for sure, Drano is going to want to sponsor you.
yeah, absolutely. I don't know why Drano. I mean, other than, our comment, but I'll take it. We can use them as a metaphor for lots of things in life, I'm sure.
Yes, we all need something unclogged.
Absolutely. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So your book is available where?
It's available on Amazon. It's probably available like online with Barnes and Noble and Walmart and stuff like that. So it's paperback, Kindle, and newly released on Audible.
Oh, very cool.
I must say it's very weird hearing your book read to you in someone else's voice.
So I was going to ask if you did it or if you had someone else do it. Sounds like you had someone else do it.
Yeah, the publisher found me somebody. I don't know that I could be consistent enough to do this myself.
Yeah. I would love to do audiobooks.
But it is weird.
I think it would be awesome. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. And sometimes I'm just like, oh, that's not how I would have said that. Or, I'm like, no, I need to do this. I need to read these books. I usually like
you have a perfect voice for it.
Well, thank you. I do a lot of video editing for my job, my day job, where I write scripts and read them for like training how to type videos. So, but I usually like to read the books of my guests before I have them on. But I didn't have time to get to yours because you booked so quickly, which is fine. That's totally fine. But I would love to read it. Is it? It's available now. It is available. Okay, and you're writing a sequel.
Yes, for sure. Yes, because there's a lot of stuff that I left out that if I told you now, you wouldn't have to buy the sequel.
Right. Well, I'm definitely gonna get the book. I don't know if I can get the Audible version. It's not on Kindle Unlimited. I probably, right?
I think it is. But if you want an Audible, I can get you one.
Well, my problem is I used to have an Audible subscription, but one book a month just wasn't enough sometimes. And so I canceled that and went to the Kindle Unlimited. But I'm learning now that Kindle Unlimited is not very profitable for the authors. And there's some exclusivity involved, I guess, if you do it I don't know. I just saw something on TikTok the other day about it. So it's called The Summer I Died 20 Times, right?
Yes. Yeah, I'll just get you an Audible. Don't worry.
You could do that?
I don't think you need to. I'm pretty sure I can.
Okay. Here it is. It is on Kindle Unlimited, but I don't think the Audible version of it is. It just says read for free, not read and listen. So I can download it and read it. I'll do that.
Okay. Whatever makes you happy.
I have a couple I've got to read before it, though. So I've got this guy's book right here that I'm scheduling an interview with him. So I bought his book through his TikTok shop. Okay. And I'm in the process of reading another one right now on Apple Books. It's called Twilight in York. So I'll be interviewing him this weekend. So I'm trying to get through his book before this weekend.
You're a busy lady. How do you have time to have a full-time job?
I don't know. I don't know. I work from home most of the time. But I work. I mean, I'm not working on this. I mean, every now and then I'll do something. But for the most part, I do this at night and on the weekends. So hopefully it'll be a full-time gig one day.
I hope so.
I think there's plenty of people out there. Plenty of stories out there to be told. And I appreciate people like you for being willing to share. I have so many friends that when I first started doing this, I was like, oh my gosh, she can tell her story and she can tell her story and he can tell his story. And some of them are like, sure, I want to do it. And then they don't follow through. And other people are like, I don't know if I want to go out there and tell this story online, put it out there in the public like that. And I get that. I totally respect that. But it surprised me. I guess I wasn't thinking that they wouldn't want to share their stories, but some people don't.
I think people have the best of intentions, and sometimes, things just come up. I know a couple of women, both their husbands passed by suicide, and they were very eager to come on. And then, they talk things over with their family and their kids and their spouse's family, and then they just decided it's not something we want to take that public, even though not a lot of people know about it. So,
right.
And, yeah, like you said, you have to respect their wishes.
You definitely do. And I get it. There's maybe living family members that they might, be talking about that could hear it, or word could get back, or, I totally understand it. I do. But maybe one day.
Maybe. Suicide's still a very taboo thing for many people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough.
I remember talking to somebody a number of years ago, and I don't know why the conversation came up, but the person said people who commit suicide are just cowards. And I thought that's just like the strangest thing to say, because they've been to this point. And wouldn't you know it, that eventually, a number of years later, they lost a child to suicide. And it's like, irony isn't a strong enough word.
Right. What is the public? I guess it's all public health there in Canada, but what is your system like for people to be able to get help? Like here, it's expensive, even if you have insurance. It's very expensive, and it's really difficult to find a counselor, a therapist, a psychiatrist, a psychologist that you like, that is any good. And if you don't have insurance, which, let's be honest, the majority of the people that need this help don't have insurance because they can't hold down a job, or they're struggling to not just mentally, but financially as well. And the public mental health system here is just awful. It's the waiting lists and just the red tape, and it's horrible. And I'm on a mission right now I have no idea. I don't even know where to start, but that's my personal mission right now, is to do something about this public mental health system, because it's lacking, for, to put it lightly. What is it like in Canada? How does it work?
Well, it's definitely a supply and demand thing, because you've got, everybody posting that you should be more open about your mental health struggles. And the more you make people aware that they're having mental health struggles to whatever degree, then there's trying to find them the right supports. In Toronto here, we've got an organization called CAMH, which is, just world class, and anybody can walk off the street and see somebody within, 24 hours.
Wow.
I don't know if that's for ongoing therapies or whatever, but it's pretty phenomenal. And my therapist actually, I think she did part of her residency at CAMH, so she's fairly knowledgeable about what happens. But it's one CAMH for a province of 10 or 12 million people, however many people live here. So it's just difficult for some mention finding that right fit. So now, and again, if they want to promote you or sponsor you, that you've got companies like Better Health or Better Help that are coming on, that you can, switch between therapists and try and find the better fit.
But it's expensive.
Again, you have to have the resources to do it.
Yeah.
So not that I'm calling anyone out, but if you have somebody like the Gates Foundation, instead of putting all your money into buying farmland and soy, maybe put a few $1 billion into mental health resources for the general population.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, it's desperately needed.
Mm-hmm. And stop going to the World Economic Forum in your private jets. Put some of that money towards things that'll actually help people.
Yeah.
I probably just got put on so many hit lists right now.
Oh, no. It's just, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I just know that it is an area that definitely, I think there's so many of the other issues, homelessness, for example, that is a direct result of poor mental health care, right? You have people who are, schizophrenic or whatever they are. And we look at them and we go, oh, they're just a drug addict. Well, there's a reason that they are a drug addict potentially, or an alcoholic or whatever. I mean, all of this stuff stems from some sort of trauma that somebody's experienced at some point in their life. So the first, obviously it's like there's a hole in the boat. So what do? Do you bail the water out, or do you fix the hole in the boat first? Right. So we're just bailing water. We're constantly bailing water and trying to, feed the homeless and house the homeless. And it's not sustainable if you can't fix the root of the issue, which is the mental health to begin with. So let's put more of our resources in general into that, whether it's, funds from tax dollars or funds from billionaires like Bill Gates, whatever it is, let's try to put more money into that and help those people become, help them with their mental illnesses. Now, of course, it takes a willingness to want to get help, and that's a whole other story. But and then let's educate people to just be better humans, maybe, and how to treat their children. And if they are treating their traumas, then they're going to be better at raising their children, and then we're going to have less issues hopefully going forward. I mean, I can see the whole big picture in my mind, but where do you start? How do you get there?
Yeah. When things get made into industries, it creates so many levels of waste, and people become more concerned about getting their next job position or an advance in their career and saving their jobs than doing the actual good work. So, you'll have to fact check this, but I think it was on Joe Rogan saying, all the help the homeless initiatives in San Francisco and Los Angeles, like more than 50% of the money goes to administration. So such a small amount actually gets to the people on the streets.
Yeah.
And that's because they've made it an industry. And when that happens, things go bad.
Yeah.
They don't achieve what they're supposed to achieve. And again, I think I just got put on a whole bunch of other hit lists. So if you never hear from me again, you know what happened.
I'll keep an eye on you. Make sure you're still out there. Well, I feel like I've taken up enough of your time this evening. It has been a pleasure. I know we got way off topic here at the end, but I feel like it's all relevant. So I appreciate you. And good luck with your book. And when the second one comes out, I'm sorry?
I appreciate you having me on. It's
not a problem. I would love to have you on again after your other book is published.
Thank you.
And then I'll read both books before we talk next.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in to Without Regret, the podcast. I really appreciate it. And I'd like to ask you to please like and subscribe. Leave me a review wherever you get your podcast. That would be really awesome because that's how my podcast is going to get noticed. So that would be a huge help, or share it on your social media would be awesome as well. Thank you so much. This podcast is a Without Regret production, which is produced by me. Artwork is by me. Everything's by me except for that theme song. That's by a guy named Michael Bruguglio. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/withoutregretpodcast and on Instagram at without_regret_podcast. Thanks again.